Hey guys, as you probably already know, Japanese people usually only have two names. They have their family name and they have a given name. And usually they use the family name first. So if the person's name's Yoshi Suzuki, he'd call himself Suzuki Yoshi. And as you know, that's usually the way it's done in Japan. The next thing is that, of course, all their names can be written in Japanese alphabets. So often kanji, sometimes hiragana, and sometimes katakana, but sometimes a combination. So their names can always be written correctly using Japanese alphabets, so one of the three alphabets. So then as a foreigner, we rock up in Japan, and quite often we have more than two names. Quite often we have a middle name. We have more than one given name, so some people have three. So let's say Robert John Smith arrives in Japan. So his first problem is he's got three names instead of two, and he usually puts them in the opposite order to the Japanese. Japanese people would say his name is Smith Robert John. So got his name in a different order to what Japanese people do, and he's got three names instead of two. And his next problem is that his name can't be written correctly in Japanese characters. So they would have to write Su instead of Smith, Sumitsu. So which is the equivalent of Sumisu, Sumisu, which is very different from Smith, isn't it? So they have to write his name differently. And then Roberto John Smith, Sumisu. So all very amusing, except the problem is that when we come to fill out forms and do other things in Japan, it's easy for the system not to accept different parts of our names. So for example, quite often forms that we fill out or computer systems where we put our name only have space for two names. So you have some options there. If you have three names or four names, you're going to have to leave one or two out. And if it's someone else processing your name, who knows what they'll do. So the reality is sometimes they'll leave a name out, sometimes they'll join our given names together, so they make him Robert John Smith, and they put the Robert John together, Sumisu, Robert John, and they make Robert John one name. They'll shorten one, they'll make an initial out of one. So what happens to us quite often here is you'll end up with a whole lot of different cards, for the hospital and for the I'll give you some examples of what I've experienced myself. I had the city made a health card for me, and the hospital made their ID card for me, and they didn't match. And of course that caused problems because then we're trying to claim insurance, but the names don't match. The bank tried to transfer money from another bank account into my Japanese bank account, and it wouldn't accept it. And it's because a foreigner's name is written in katakana usually, but sometimes we use small katakana to write our name, and it didn't accept it because it wanted all large katakana. Most recently, PayPal tried to, some money's been coming into my PayPal account, tried to withdraw it, and they won't let me withdraw it. When we set up the account, just used two names because that's all it had on the form. Now PayPal's an American company, of course, but they have a system in Japan for Japanese people that only had two names. So we put two names and wrote our address in Romaji, in the Romaji, the Roman characters, the ABC characters, and then they say, no, sorry, it doesn't match your other details. So it's endless. It's endless. Any foreigner that's lived in Japan long term will be able to give you lots of examples of this where they've had endless problems. The city, every time I went to City Hall, the city would say, you haven't paid your tax. And I'd have to get my accountant on the phone to explain to them that they messed it up. They put my name in a different name, paid the tax, but every time I go there to process something else, they say I haven't paid the tax. And every time at the end of it, they go, yes, now we see, yes, we understand, it's all okay. And then I go there a year later and they do it again. You haven't paid your tax. So somewhere in their system, they've written the name in two different ways, and the end result is that every time we go in there, we have problems. So it's never ending. And companies, companies like PayPal and the bank, you have the problem. Government agencies, pretty much anything, and it's a never-ending problem. And it's frustrating for foreigners because writing our name in katakana isn't our name. The guy's name is Robert John Smith. And writing his name in katakana and calling him Su Roberto, is not his name, which is frustrating in itself. But then when it leads to a whole heap of never-ending problems like it does, it's really frustrating. It's really, really frustrating, And then you can get one organisation will call him Roberto, and then other organisation writes his name as Roberta or Roberte, and straight away it doesn't match. So it's never ending. It's never ending, and it's really frustrating. And it's just with a lot of local city stuff, it's sort of understandable. But when you get an organisation like PayPal, PayPal actually has an English page on their Japanese system. So when you're in Japan and you use PayPal, there is an English page. But the introduction page to it says that this English page is under construction, and it said that for a year. And then the system's just not compatible with foreigners. So the solution to the PayPal problem that we had was that we have to write everything in Japanese characters, including our address, which obviously isn't English friendly either. So that's an American company. So, it's never ending. It's never ending. And they know. Another one that you guys should look out for if you're going to spend some time in Japan is Western Union. And apparently this is a really common problem. There's some communication problem in Western Union, and if someone sends from America or England or Australia Robert John Smith some money, when it goes into the Japanese system, it's back to front and it's got 3 names and it fails. And apparently 1 in 10, a Western Union staff member told me this, 1 in 10 transfers on Western Union in Japan to a foreigner fails for this reason. That the system in another country, you write it in your normal way, Robert John Smith, and then when it turns up in Japan, it's back to front. And the people go into Western Union and I'm here for my money, and they can't get the money. And one of the other frustrating things is that because all the companies and businesses here are so pedantic, and government organisations, and because nobody is going to step forward and solve a problem for you because they don't want to do anything different to what everybody else is doing, they'll be pedantic. And you can be standing there, you can be the only foreigner in a small town like I am, and you can be standing there with your name written on your ID and another piece of ID that's just got the same name written in the opposite direction, plus the address, and it's obvious it's you. They're talking to you because they know it's you, and they'll say, no, sorry. PayPal are the same. PayPal send an email and say, your details don't match, we can't give you your money, my money that's gone into my account, we can't give you your money because your details don't match. And yet they're communicating with me because they know it's me. They've got a copy of all the ID, they know what's going on, and they know that this happens all the time to foreigners. But nobody's going to say, it's obviously you. They don't do that. They're pedantic about it. So it'll leave you tearing your hair out on a regular basis. And it doesn't matter how long you live here, they'll never get it right. There'll always be some group or organisation or company or somebody that's messing it up and driving you crazy. So this is on the how-to playlist. The only solution to this is to use, now at the moment we've got an alien registration card. The foreigners have an alien registration card, and that's been replaced slowly with another thing that's basically the same, that's got a more politically correct name. So there's a foreigner ID card. The Japanese people have a different system of ID, but foreigners have it's an alien card. It's what it is now. It's what it always will be. They're just going to change the name of it, basically. So that ID card is what you use with companies and with government institutions and with everybody to identify yourself. So the smartest thing you can do is to make sure that anything that you do, any form you fill out, any information you give to anybody is exactly the same as it is on that foreigner card. Now on the foreigner card, what you'll probably find is your name will be written with your family name first, and then other given names after that. And it will usually be written in Romaji, so it will be usually written in the ABC alphabet, so that's good, at least that's correct. But the order will be family name first, then your given names, and you'll probably find your address will be written in Japanese, so kanji and maybe hiragana, but usually kanji, so Japanese writing. So the smartest thing you can do is to always make sure whenever you give information or fill out a form, make it exactly the same as that card, because that's usually what they use to cross-check. So if you make it match the same as that, that will reduce the problems you'll have. You will still have problems. You'll still have mail turning up. It's all sorts of weird combinations of your name. You know, Rojon Sumisu. You know, they'll always mess it up. You'll always have that problem, and you'll always have problems with forms not matching and problems with your name. It's just the way it is in Japan, because you're different. You know, and so they'll always mess it up. But if you make everything match your alien registration card, that will help. That will help reduce the amount of hassle you have. The problem you also have is quite often Romaji is not an option. Even though it's on your card in Romaji, quite often at other times you have to write it in katakana. And that in itself is going to cause problems because it won't match, will it? But you won't have an option. Quite often you'll fill out a form and it says it must be Romaji. Well, straight away, it's not going to match your alien registration card. So it's a never-ending problem, but just do that. If you just try and make everything match your foreigner ID card as much as possible, that will reduce the amount of hassle you have with this. But really, if you're going to live in Japan, this is going to be a problem that you're just going to have to deal with. You just got to accept it, and you've got to be patient. And it's really frustrating because it's even when it's plain obvious that you are this same person, there'll just be a lot of going on, and nobody's going to suddenly go, oh look, it's just him, give him his money. It's not going to happen. It's not going to happen. You just have to be really patient and do whatever they tell you. Probably requires filling out lots more forms and doing lots more stuff, you know, and it's just the way it is. We just have to be patient. A lot of stuff is like that. You know, the foreigner, I was with a Japanese guy once when we went to the police station to update addresses on our driver's license, and he walked in and was out the door in 5 minutes, and I walked in and it took an hour. It's often the case because we're foreigners, or, you know, geez, it's different. It's different because you're foreign. So anyway, yeah, make everything match your alien registration card, and that will keep your stress to the minimum. Deep breaths. More videos coming soon.